what problem can I help society solve? I just think in terms of every video I make is supposed to solve a problem. Like, I'm not there to be entertaining. I'm there to help them learn something.
Dr. Alex Lyon is a tenured professor of communication at SUNY Brockport. He recently co-authored Positive Communication for Leaders. He's the creator of the Communication Coach Alexander Lyon YouTube channel, which I wrote this down. You've got 516,000 subscribers. Even the most positive, the well-intentioned leaders don't always do simple things like greetings properly.
The people in the department were literally refusing to greet each other. They would take the back stairway rather than walk by someone's door for fear that they would have to greet them. If we want to transform relationships, whose responsibility is this to re-engage? Who has to take the first step when things are strained?
You're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, once again to Learn, Speak, Teach on the Real Business Connections Network. I'm here today with Dr. Alexander, or Alex, Lyon. What's happening, man? Excited.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben. I'm so glad we got to do this.
This has been a long time coming. I feel like I've been looking forward to this since college.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I didn't know I was looking forward to it until we reconnected, but I'm pumped to be here.
I'm going to quickly introduce you so the listener knows exactly who we're speaking with today, and then we'll shoot the breeze a little bit. But Dr. Alex Lyon is a tenured professor of communication at SUNY Brockport, of which I attended. He recently co-authored, actually reading the book right now, Positive Communication for Leaders, which is incredible guideline for any leader out there. And he's the creator of the Communication Coach Alexander Lyon YouTube channel, which I wrote this down. You've got 516,000 subscribers, nearly 30 million views, and you've ton of experience doing workshops for Nike, Google. You've instructed over 60,000 students online. And you're really just helping leaders amplify their influence, hone their communication in a positive way. And it blows my mind because I'm going to talk a little bit and then shut up because I want to learn from you. I had you for 2 to 3 classes in SUNY Brockport. And, it comes with age. It comes with time. I feel like I was, up late on the weekends, not paying attention in class. And I'm like, what the heck did I miss out on? Like, part of me wants to go back to school to learn from you more, but I'm in a beautiful situation like everyone in the world that we can learn many of these communication concepts with your YouTube channel. So I just want to say I'm honored to speak with you. And I want to apologize for not paying as good attention in class as I could have.
Oh, believe me, I remember you as a fantastic student. In fact, you don't have to call me Dr. Lyon anymore. You can just call me Alex, just like everybody else does.
I think it's important to say Dr. Lyon so people know that you are a doctor.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sure they know.
One more thing about school, and then we'll get into good stuff.
Sure.
I'm just curious about the whole push-up competition thing, because that's going to be a memory I'm always going to have, because you're the first ever professor to, create a venture, a quest where we were going to have a push-up competition at the end of the year. Do you remember when you made that announcement or why you made it?
Yeah, I do remember that. I was trying to eat right and get in shape, and I think just spur of the moment, I said to myself, hey, we should have a push-up contest. That'll keep me motivated. So I told everybody toward the beginning of the semester, I said, okay, like last week of class, we're going to do this. Anybody can enter. I'm telling you now so you can get training. I'm trained. I'm going to get ready, so you better get ready. And then we had the contest, and unfortunately, I did not win. I came very close, as you remember. I think I did. We tried to do as many as we could, and I think I did 50 or 60, but the other guy did several more. So he got a trophy it was a Hulk. It was a Hulk trophy that we gave him. We made a big deal out of it. It was fun.
Well, and he either was in the military or going into the military. So he had a physique that you and I, with just a little bit of training, couldn't quite catch up to.
Right. Yeah, he was built for it.
How do you feel that went? Do you think it was good for class rapport, or what was your experience?
It might have been good for class reports. Let's say 5 or 6 people entered, I think. It wasn't the whole class. It was just a handful of people entered the contest. And I think we had fun. It was something for me to look forward to. It wasn't really strategic though, Ben. I just was having fun. I was saying, hey, I wasn't doing it as a calculated decision. I'm not that smart. I just said, this seems like it would be fun. I want to have a challenge myself. Maybe some of the students want to have a little challenge. So I don't know. People seem to enjoy it. I think they liked watching their professor try, to do a bunch of push-ups. I think that was fun for them.
Hey, you did great. I mean, you were top of the list. You impressed everybody. It was fun. It was fun. And we're going to get into the YouTube channel and the book in a second, but since we're on it, like, still to this day, I mean, can I use the word famous? Is that too much?
I think it's too much. I think it's way too much.
You have a little bit of notoriety and fame on YouTube, but you're still humbly a professor. Well, what do you learn from your students on a daily and yearly basis?
Well, sometimes I learn, Ben, how out of touch I am with what is happening in the world. Other times, it starts to make me feel, when I first started, I felt like I was close in age to them and I could relate and they could relate to me. And then there was a period where a bunch of my references to pop culture no longer made sense to anybody and they didn't know any of the same bands. But now it's coming full circle because I'm about as old as their parents. And now when I mention some classic rock bands or old movies, now they all nod. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I say, how did you know about these bands? And they say, oh, my parents. So it's coming full circle. And they teach me just about what's going on right now and what life is like for them in the workplace now, even in their part-time jobs. And a lot of them do work in like legitimate, businesses, even in the summer. And they're thinking about what they want to become when they get older. So it keeps me young, keeps my mind fresh. And I love the overall experience of being a teacher. It's really rewarding.
What was what you expected? Why did you get into teaching? And was this what you expected from the start?
Yeah, sort of what I expected. It's been a journey, but I first got into it because I was an undergrad like you were one day. And I was sitting in my class. It was a summer class with Dr. E.J. Min at Rhode Island College. And I was trying to catch up. So I took an extra class in the summer on something like pop culture and communication. We were reading really interesting articles and watching movies and dissecting them. It was a super vibrant conversation. And I remember thinking in the middle of this vibrancy, I looked at Dr. Min and I thought to myself, wow, he's at work right now. He's getting paid to do this. That's pretty amazing. And I thought maybe I could be a professor. My parents were both teachers, but I never saw teaching as an option when I looked at them. But when I saw my college teachers doing it, it was easier for me to connect. And so I thought, well, I think I want to do this. So I asked them, what do you think? And I don't know why they encouraged me, but they did encourage me at the time. And the rest is history, as they say. I just took about a year off after undergrad and then went to grad school and been doing it ever since.
So you've been doing it your whole career. Were you the dean of the department at one point?
I was the chair of the department. Until last year. So yeah.
And so where does YouTube come into play? And I read on your channel, like you kind of went through the timeline and it was August 3rd, 2023 that you hit 500,000 subscribers. That was 7 years, 2 months, and 2 days. So like anything in life, you didn't snap your fingers and hit 500K.
That's right.
Talk about getting started and a little bit of that transformation up to that level.
Well, I first got started because I looked out at my students on their phones in class and said, well, if I want to get my students' attention, I've got to get on their phones. That's literally how it started. So I started making lecture over PowerPoint videos for my classes just for the purposes of my own students. But when I put them up on a different channel, just a kind of a no-name channel, other people started watching the videos, and I was shocked. I said, why is anybody watching these, So I did that for a couple of years, but then I thought maybe there's something here. And I looked around and I saw a handful of other communication channels. And I thought maybe I could do this. They seem to be doing all right. So they inspired me to try. And I also had been doing a lot of consulting and workshops on the road. And I like traveling for vacations, but I don't enjoy business travel nearly as much. So I thought maybe I can do this on video, I don't know. That was my thinking.
Yeah. And
so I started making tip videos, very short tip videos for professionals and emerging leaders in 2016. And, at first really not many people watched, but after 2-3 years, it started to catch on a little bit more. And then in the last couple of years, it's really gone pretty crazy. So I was glad I hung in there.
Why do you think, and first off, congrats on hanging in there, because a lot of people would quit when they feel like they're plateauing.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's been received so well?
Well, it's hard to say. I think I listened to a lot of advice in terms of there are channels out there on YouTube, and their whole purpose is to teach other people how to run a channel, how to make a successful channel. So I listened to a lot of that advice. They tell you, the kind of gear you can buy and what the format of a video should be, like literally right down to exact microphones, lights, how many frames per second you should have your camera on, the type of lens you should use, how you should script, how you should use a teleprompter, should you use notes. They walk you through every little thing, how to make a thumbnail image, everything. And I didn't know how to do any of that, so I was eating it up. I thought, wow, these guys can open these doors for me because they'll teach you step by step. So that is, I think, the thing that really helped was that I listened to the advice and I put it into practice. I didn't just think, well, that's not the way I want to do it. I want to do things my own way. I said, Alex, you're good at teaching maybe, but you're not a YouTube channel manager. You don't know what you're doing on the technical side. So I just took their advice, didn't even question it really. Maybe I should have, but I didn't even question it. If they said, this is the lens, this is the camera lens you want, I would be like, okay, check, good enough for me. And I would just go get that lens. So I'm really good at seeking out advice. This is like my superpower. I've said this a few times in the past. My superpower is finding good advice and putting it into practice. And sure enough, when I followed their advice, the channel started to grow. So really, I have other people to thank for that help.
If you're willing, let's go one layer deeper, because a lot of us can take the same advice. We have the lens, we have the scripting, we understand exactly how long it's supposed to be, the transition, the hook. We have that all on paper. But a lot of people do get on YouTube and don't gain much traction. Do you think that you're special, or there's something specific about your message and your topic that people relate to? Because again, someone could use the same template and fail, but you took that template and were tremendously successful. Well, why do you think that is?
I don't know, Ben. I mean, I don't think I'm special. I think that my skill set for some reason works relatively well on camera. So I'm fortunate in that way. Blessed, you could say, because it's not as if I didn't know what I was doing at first, but some people, and it took me a while to get comfortable on camera, but I think some people struggle with that. You're good at it, and people who are great at it, but we've all seen channels who they might have good content, but there's something about it that they're not used to that mode of communication as well as someone who's super comfortable. So it might not connect. So the other thing that people tell me, so this is in the comment section, a lot of people tell me, they say that I'm really good at saying things in plain language, but that's actually helpful. So I don't dress it up and try to make it seem like I'm teaching secrets that only I know. I don't actually believe there are any secrets. I think all the information's out there. So I try to package it in a way that's going to be extremely practical. And I always think to myself, I want them to finish the video and be able to use this immediately. And so that's something I always focus on. What problem can I help them solve when it comes to communication, leadership, communication in the workplace? What problem are they dealing with? How can I help them solve that? And I think that is, and I've been told that's the way entrepreneurs think. They think, what problem can I help society solve? I just think in terms of every video I make is supposed to solve a problem. And I think that angle helps. Like, I'm not there to be entertaining. I'm not there to make them laugh. I'm not there for an escape. I'm there to help them learn something. And I think that focus translates to the viewer on the other side.
That makes perfect sense, because I do this sometimes where I'll take all these ideas and I'll word salad them together. Like, my mission's to extract the wisdom from the people who have it to people who need it and be a bridge so that communication can be transferred to the people that feel it. And at some point, it kind of is just, it makes sense to me, but I'm over talking. And it appears you have a incredible ability to communicate concisely so the listener can gain value easily without feeling like over talked or like condescended upon because you're using this fluttery, complicated language. Does that seem to be right?
Yeah. And I would say that in a podcast conversation, long form, like we're doing now, I'm not really concerned about being real concise right now. We're here to talk for a while, right?
I want to hear stories.
Yeah, exactly. But on a video where that they may not have ever seen me before, and they can easily just click off just as easily and go to the next thing. You got to be bottom line. You got to be concise. So I do make great efforts to get right to it and to practice what I preach in the videos.
I'm going to click and jump to the next thing right now. And because I have your book right next to me, I keep glancing at it. I'm like, we got to talk about the book because it's incredible. I mean, you've accomplished a lot. Where did it come into play that you're like, I want to document this into a book? And this is kind of a double barrel question, but like, you decided to write a book and then you decided to partner with your friend on the book. Why'd you write the book and why'd you choose to partner on it?
Well, my friend Julien Mirivel, he's the co-author of the book. I've known him since graduate school, so 25 years. We've presented at conferences, our research together. We've written journal articles together. We worked at the same college for a while as teachers, and we're good friends. And he's already written a couple of books. I wrote a book a while back, a textbook of case studies, but nevertheless, a book. And one day we were on the phone because we talk frequently, and he said, "Oh, I'm just stuck on this book project. I can't seem to find the right angle." And I said, "Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm trying to write a book too, and I can't seem to find the right angle." And it was almost like a dating app where you're like, "Hey, I think we have some commonality here. Maybe we should work together again," because we had done it in the past. And so we started brainstorming, and he has this amazing model of positive communication that he developed in previous research and previous book. And he wanted to put a leadership and professional communication angle on it to translate that and get it out to people in the professional world. And that's my whole strike zone. So we took his model and some of my professional side, and we put our heads together and we came up with positive communication for leaders. And we got a book deal, and we had a great time writing it together.
Boom, baby. And let's get into it. I wrote this down. One of the quotes that caught my attention here. What ultimately matters in leadership is not what you think or feel, it's what you do. What ultimately matters in leadership is not what you think or feel, it's what you do. What does that mean?
It means a couple of things. In the leadership literature, there's a huge focus right now on mindset. And I am all on board with that. Mindset drives behavior. However, at the same time, on the outside, if that mindset doesn't translate to actual behavior, how you act, how you treat people, how you communicate in the moment, then it's not helping your followers very much. So I think we need to get past or extend our leadership philosophies and our mindsets into concrete, actionable behavior. And that's one of the things that Julie and I are pretty good at. So we show the reader exactly how to put these 6 principles of positive communication into practice in their daily life at the individual level, at the team level, and even the organizational level. So we have checklists, action steps, activities, all these hands-on approaches to get some momentum on their team culture and to turn things around.
It's thorough. It's like a workbook, dude. Like I realized I needed a pen because there are so many applications and reflections and takeaways at the end of the chapter. And I'm like, and I like that because it got me integrating some of my thoughts and journaling on it rather than just kind of, I haven't finished the book by the time in the interview because I moved slowly with it. It wasn't the kind of thing that I just pounded through.
Yeah, that was one of our goals. We didn't want people to finish our book and say, that's interesting, which is often what we all do, right? When we read a book and then you move on to the next book. What we wanted people to do is in every chapter, pause and say, okay, what can I do with this tomorrow when I show up at work? What action can I take that'll change things for the better immediately? And so we put a ton of interaction in the book, right? Activities, like I said, challenges, and it does at times feel almost like a workbook. I mean, it's not a workbook, but there's enough in there to keep you applying the ideas, and at least it's an opportunity. We can't force readers to apply the ideas, but that's the whole goal. So I'm glad you're reading it slowly because that's what it's meant. It's not meant to just be a breeze. It's just about 200 pages. So it's not a long book, but you're not meant to just read it in one sitting and be done and change it. Like, oh, cool. It's meant to change the way you actually lead.
Yeah. And to change the way you actually lead, it's not just reading through it and then you're a master of the concepts. It's starting to implement them. Like something, I mean this with the most respect. A lot of these concepts just sound so darn simple and obvious.
Right.
For example, you open with greetings.
Right.
Haven't we been doing that our whole life? Do you find that even the most the well-intentioned leaders don't always do simple things like greetings properly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are very simple communication principles and practices in the book. And my whole philosophy is you people might say, oh yeah, we're supposed to greet people, but that's not the question. It's not whether you know it. It's, are you doing it? Are you actually doing it? Because when Julien and I get called into workplaces and they say, hey, can you help us with our team culture? We need leadership training. And then we observe, this is a real example in the book, and I've seen it too, but this is the example in the book's from Julien. He was called in to help turn a department around. And he noticed that the people in the department were literally refusing to greet each other. Wow. They would not greet each other. They would take the back stairway rather than walk by someone's door for fear that they would have to greet them. Mm. So when you see things going wrong in a relationship, whether it's professional or personal, one of the first things we withhold is the greeting.
Right.
And we say, okay, if we want to transform relationships, whose responsibility is this to re-engage? Who has to take the first step when things are strained? And we say it's the leader. The leader is the, quote, adult in the relationship. If there's tension, if you're not talking to someone, they're not talking to you, you have to put on your adult clothes, take a deep breath, and head over to their office, knock on the door, and ask them how their weekend was. Ask them how they're doing. Break the ice a little bit. And all the behaviors are like that. And we're not disregarding or diminishing real tensions and real concerns. In fact, the book is filled with tips on how to recalibrate difficult relationships. But we have to start somewhere. So the first opening chapter is on greetings and how to do it well. Because if you can't get past the greeting, then you ain't going nowhere in that conversation, in that relationship.
Well, let's talk about how to do it well. And just real quick, this is reminding me, it's kind of meta, but it was Gary Vee talking about what someone told him. So this is Ben talking about Gary Vee, talking about what an employee told him. But what they noticed is in all his videos, he would hold the door for people that were significantly below him in the ladder of his company, put his arm around their back and be friendly and be willing to walk beside you or behind you. And then in other scenarios, you'll see these big shot leaders that are closing doors in people's face. And Gary, I don't think systematically said, oh, I'm a door holder. I'm going to do this to create a human behavior perception in someone's head that I'm a good. That was just who he was. He was treating his team members as team members and friends and peers.
Right.
And it just blowed my mind hearing him talk about that, because it's those very little things that people notice, right?
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, you can reflect on what Gary did well or extend on it, but like, how do we properly greet people and greet them with like an actual element of welcome, not just do it because we're supposed to, but authentically greet them in a positive way?
Yeah, well, I think the key is authenticity. I don't know Gary V, and I'm guessing you don't know him personally either.
No.
But we've both seen a lot of his content. And so based upon what I've seen, I think it's authentic. I think that Gary V genuinely likes people. He genuinely cares about people. And out of that sincerity, he treats people like that. Now, that's where going back to the quote you opened with, what matters is what he's actually doing.
The action.
Right. So the CEOs who let a door slam in an employee's face might say, oh, it's not that I don't care about people. I do care about people. It's just that I'm really busy. Okay, well, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel to that employee. It matters what you do, how you treat them. So it has to be, number one, sincere. So once you have a genuine care for people, a genuine appreciation for people, the behaviors become pretty easy. So let's brainstorm it together right now, Ben. When someone greets you well, what are they doing to make you feel like, wow, that was so great to see that person? That was above expectations. What kinds of small behaviors might you point to that they're doing?
The biggest one that I don't think I was aware of when I was younger, but I started to notice it, is just their body position being straight towards me. So they're not looking over their shoulder or mumbling. Like when I feel like the best greeting ever is when someone like is looking at me like I'm the only person on earth.
You got it. You just did it. And I mean, that's the way it's done. When everyone feels like they're the only person there, at least for that moment, that's a good greeting. And they say Elvis Presley used to do that. When he talked to you, even though he was the king of rock and roll, you felt like you were the most important person in the universe for those moments. They say that Arnold Schwarzenegger is like that too. They said like he's the best celebrity at meeting people because he makes you feel like really special, even though he's only talking to you for 15 or 20 seconds. He'll come up to you and he'll say, "Oh, Ben, how you doing? Oh, you're looking pumped. You look amazing, Ben. Good to see you." And you go, "Holy smoke. Arnold thinks I look pumped." Like he gives you that wonderful greeting and experience that you're going to remember forever. But other people, they might say they care about people. They might defend themselves. But if they're looking, like you said, if they're looking over their shoulder, if they're looking at their phone, or if they just breeze by you, no fist bump, no handshake, that's not very good. So all the qualities you just mentioned are exactly right. They go all in, at least for a moment. They go all in with you in that greeting.
All in. And let's put you on the spot, because you're an incredible example of it, because as a professor, you've got new students every semester, every class. You're juggling multiple priorities in school. You're meeting people. You're learning their names. Me personally, that sounds a bit overwhelming. And I can only imagine that if someone's stressed or overwhelmed, it'll take them a little bit more out of the present, and they don't necessarily greet people or act the way they wish they could. Have you found that to be a struggle, or how do you navigate as a leader, like all these personalities, and still be mindful that, okay, I've got my stuff, but I still need to treat everybody like they're a superhero? Like, how do you do it?
It is a challenge. It's a lot of effort goes into it. And most people don't realize it takes a lot of effort, but it does. So for example, yesterday for 2 of my 3 classes, I don't know if we did the name game when you were in the class, but first week of class, we do this ball toss and we all learn everybody's name in the class. And it sounds impossible that you could learn 30 or 40 or 50 names all at once, but it works. We have this activity and it works. So yesterday I learned all my students' names, except for one big class that we still have to do that in. And the students really feel great when you call them a name, and there's even a nickname that goes with it. So those are all little things that I do to make sure that I'm getting to know people, showing them I care. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the fact. So now when I see them next time, I get to say, hey, Ben, how's it going? How was your morning? And they go, oh, he does remember my name. Little tiny connections like that, little tiny relationship deposits in that account can add up to quite a bit. And as far as how do I, what's my main strategy? My main strategy is really simple. Whoever I'm talking to, the person in front of me is the one that matters. So just the person in front of me. I don't have to worry about how do I juggle 100 relationships this semester with students. I don't. Who's ever in front of me, that's who I'm focused on. Who's ever the person in my office hours, who's ever answering, whoever I'm responding to on an email, if I'm taking a phone call, or if I'm sharing an example in class and I'm looking at someone in the front row for that 3 to 5 seconds, they're the person that matters the most to me right then. I don't really think in terms of managing 100 relationships this semester. I think about individual relationships, 100 individual relationships, and it's way more manageable when I just focus on what's right in front of me.
One person at a time.
That's right.
So let's talk about an individual relationship then. So you can maybe help me build the scenario, but you've greeted someone, you're facing them, you smile, you're excited to see them, and it's just you and them. So a conversation's about to take place. What comes next? I mean, you mentioned in the book about, asking open-ended questions and like, what is the next step in the I guess let's step up. I'm talking too much. So what is the scenario? Do we want to do like a sales meeting, a business meeting, a parent-teacher conference? What's a good scenario to kind of dissect here?
Well, I think that you were right onto it. You were just about to get into that. The next step is to ask a question.
But let's make a scenario. So
scenario.
We can kind of
okay.
Look at how that would look.
Sure. So let's say the book is about developing relationships. So we're not really talking mostly about task level communication, as in,
got it.
Here are the 3 agenda items we're going to cover today in the meeting. That's a task communication. What we're talking about is connecting and building relationships at the individual, team level, and organizational level. So let's say you are at a group meeting and you get there early. One of the ways after you greet everybody, one of the ways to get to know people better is to ask an open-ended question. And that can be as simple as, what did you do over the weekend? And these questions are not groundbreaking, but you're showing that you care and you're interested. And you might follow up on something that you already know about. So let's just pretend you have 24 cats, Ben. I don't know if you have any cats at all, but let's just pretend. I would say, how are your cats doing? And of course, if you're the kind of person who has a bunch of cats, you're going to be thrilled to talk about that, right? Because A, I remembered you had cats, and B, I thought enough to ask you about it. So asking open-ended questions, and you can do that in a group as well. You can do purposeful icebreakers, not icebreakers just to play a game or to be goofy, but to get to know each other. Like one of the ones we talk about in the book is called, it's called Highlight Hardship Hero. Highlight Hardship Hero. What's one highlight from your week? What's one hardship? And who's been your hero this week? And each person goes around and just answers each of those in one sentence. And people are self-disclosing. They're getting to know each other. They feel a sense of commonality, common ground, because everybody has highlights, hardships, and heroes. You can do this at the team level and at the organizational level on offsite retreats and all kinds of team building exercises company-wide. You can use open-ended questions to draw people out, to even performance evaluations. When did you feel you were at your best this past year? How can we create more of those moments for you? All kinds of open-ended questions can lead to positive results. There's a statistic in the book that blew my mind, and it really shows that asking questions is a leadership behavior. And that this statistic is this: only 6% of communication actions are questions, but those questions generate 60% of the conversation in the room. So just by asking more questions, you are demonstrating leadership. You're leading that conversation. So questions are a huge benefit to your team and your leadership. And the behaviors go from there. We don't have to go through every one in the book, but
sure.
that's the greeting and then the questions. That's a 1-2 punch. I would say right now, if we just took those 2 of the 6 behaviors in the book, good greeting and knowing how to ask questions, if you learn just those 2, you would already be in the top 10% of conversationalists and connectors in society. Almost nobody greets well, and very seldom they follow up with a decent question. So you would already be in an elite group if you just did those 2 out of the 6.
Love that. And just so you know, most of the listeners already are kick butt leaders and communicators.
Yes.
So let's move up to 1%. And I'm just going to make an assumption, agree or disagree. I feel like you've got greetings, questions, listening.
Yeah.
Isn't that like the key? Because I could be like, hey, Alex, what's your story? How was your weekend? And then if I just go off on some tangent and don't actually listen.
That's right.
I haven't communicated at all. The message was not sent.
Yeah, there's a few other behaviors in the book. The 3rd is complimenting. The 4th is self-disclosing. The 5th is encouraging. But the 6th one, you nailed it. You're not there yet in the book, but you saw the future, is listening well. And listening well is a gift that you can give your people, your followers, your employees, if you have them. Because when someone really listens to you and focuses on you, again, like you're the only person there, it feels amazing. It builds the relationships. It forms a bond with the other person. And then if you know how to listen with empathy and enter the person's world a little bit, put yourself in their shoes, they're really going to respond to that. And again, none of these are superficial behaviors. They have to be done authentically. You have to actually like people, care about people. You can't fake it. People know when you're faking it eventually, right? They figure it out. They'll catch you glancing at your phone or something. But if you really listen carefully and you reflect back what you're hearing and you're empathizing, that's magic to a relationship. If you can really, people love good listeners. We pay therapists big money just to listen to us. Most therapy sessions are 90% listening for the therapist. They're just listening, eye contact, nodding along, saying things like, I hear you. That sounds hard, right? I mean, we pay good money to have people listen to us. So that's got to be you were 100% right. That is one of the behaviors.
How does this conversation feel to you? I'm just playing therapist now.
You're doing it.
I'm just playing therapist now. You would think that, again, like we are born, we speak, we listen, we do it every day. I feel like a lot of people might think, well, but I have ADHD, or but I'm a little overwhelmed with X, or but I had a long day, or but I'm not that interested in the topic. Like, it's easy to make excuses not to listen presently. So I think it's important to address, like, how do we actually listen better? Because assuming we're going to have both ears most of our life, eventually that's our ability to hear might go away eventually. But assuming we're going to hear our whole life, we're going to be doing it our whole life. I think it's probably pretty important that we listen well. Well, how do we do that?
Listening is a real tough one for people nowadays. I think we used to probably be better at it in like the 60s and 70s days before we had a million things trying to grab our attention. I'll tell you the number one killer or the number one block for good listening is a device. Your phone. Or if you're in a restaurant, the screen that's in back of the other person that you're talking to, that you're trying to eat a dinner and have a nice conversation, and there's a soccer game in back of
that's what gets
the
me.
Screen. Devices, right? So what we advocate for in the book is, you might have, when we talk about the listening barriers and how to overcome them, but at a basic level, you have to create the ideal conditions for listening. So if there's a lawnmower outside, then close the window. If your phone is visible, turn it off and put it completely out of sight. There's research that shows even if your phone is off but still in view, you'll score 20% less on a quiz on the material that was just shared compared to people who put their phone. Yeah, put it out of sight, Ben. Quick. But if you put it away and completely out of sight, you'll do 20% better. So a lot of the times we say, oh, I can't listen, I'm not a good listener, but it's because we are allowing or creating a fairly distracting environment. And maybe we're not really committed to listening in the first place. Maybe we're like, oh, I'll have to listen to this, but then I'm still waiting for my turn to talk. But you have to just say, no, I'm here to listen today. And I do that a lot. I'll go into a conversation with a friend and I'll say, today, when I get coffee with my buddy, I'm just going to listen. Maybe I'll talk if Ben asked, if we were out to coffee and asked, I might talk, but my priority is to listen. And so I'll find a way to turn, after I answer the question, I'll ask you a follow-up and I'll just listen and listen and listen. So I'll take entire conversations and just dedicate it to listening. And the more you, it's like any other practice, any other skill, it's like a muscle. The more you practice listening, the better you'll get. Maybe the first conversation you try this, you can listen for 3 minutes without getting distracted, but you can build this muscle just like any other skill that you want to build.
And this is going to help us in our career as well. This will help us be a better leader at our companies.
Yeah, 100%. There's research that shows that as leaders move up the ranks, they'll spend more time listening, so that the average leader listens at least twice as much during their day as an individual contributor listens. And it seems like individual contributors are only listening, right? We're not talking, we're just listening, we're at meetings, but leaders listen much more than anybody else. The higher you go, the more you listen. And some leaders do that terribly and some do it well. But the point is, if you're going to be listening more, then you better get good at it. And I can tell you from experience, the best supervisors I have, when I meet with them in one-to-ones throughout my career, they write what I say down. They take notes on the conversation. That's a skill that not everybody does. In fact, my co-author, my good friend Julien Mirivel, he was at my house, he was visiting. We were doing a talk here in the Rochester area. So he stayed over, we had dinner. And when we were talking that evening, he had a notebook out and he was writing down things I was saying. He's saying, oh, tell me more about that. He was writing it down. It was so flattering that he would think enough of me to take notes on what I said. I wish I'd have been taking notes on what he said. I felt embarrassed because I didn't have my notebook with me. I thought, oh, he's out listening me. But when people get serious about listening, they'll develop these habits and these practices to help them level up like any other skill.
I love this. Have you ever looked at the notes? Like you look at the notes and it says, email Elizabeth later.
It says,
what am I cooking for dinner?
It says bananas, carrots, bread. I said, wait, you're making a grocery shopping list this whole time? I have seen his notebook, but I think he's the only one that can read his handwriting. It's illegible to most human beings. He actually wrote me a note. I have it right here. And it looks like something from Star Trek. I can barely make it out. I needed my wife's help to decipher it. So it wouldn't do me much good to look at his notebook, but I have a feeling he's taking what I say seriously. When he takes notes, and he doesn't take notes on a tablet or a phone. He takes notes in an old-fashioned notebook with a pen.
I love that. I have a tablet itself. It's a remarkable tablet, and part of what I love about it, I love it about it, but it doesn't work because my handwriting's so poor. But it'll actually upload my writing to. It'll transcribe it for me. So it'll take my written and then turn it into typed notes. So I have the ability to traditionally write, but then have a typed outcome, assuming I write clear enough for it to transition. But that's my go-to recommendation for anybody. I have a remarkable tablet, and I have like 16 notebooks on it. Wow. So I just pull up the notebook I need for that moment, write notes, and I'm on page 700 on some of them. That's
amazing.
I would be walking around school with a book bag that only weighs 2 pounds if I had done that in this day and age.
That's amazing.
So what one random hot take, and then I want to go into the rapid fire round.
Sure.
Because you had talked about the Tropicana logo. PepsiCo changed the logo, and the audience didn't like it. And then when further examination, they didn't really poll or do any like case studies or focus groups to like understand if the audience would like the new logo. So it was a big mishap.
Right.
And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on X.com, because is that not exactly what Elon Musk did? He took Twitter and he's owned X.com way back in his was it Confinity? I'm drawing a blank, but before PayPal, there was Confinity and X.com. And X.com and Confinity merged, created PayPal, because to be fighting against each other didn't make sense. So they merged payment processing, created PayPal, became billionaires. But he has been in love with X.com ever since those days. So he has Twitter, and then he turns it into X.com. Any thoughts on that? Is that another Tropicana situation where he's not, just any opinion on what's going on there?
So I'm not on Twitter,
okay,
or X, whatever it's called.
Me neither. And so I don't know what I'm doing talking about it. I'm not,
no, it's okay.
Not qualified, doctor.
Well, I don't think that disqualifies us, because we're not really talking about the daily activity of sending out a tweet. But it did shock me. I saw it in the news and I thought to myself, this, exactly like you said, this does not sound like the kind of idea that they ran by anybody to see if it would work or not. And I guess time will tell if people don't like the rebranding, if more followers join or more people leave. I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen. I haven't seen any data on that just yet in terms of daily users since they changed it. But it did seem out of left field, and I did not know what you just told me, which was he already had this name, right? He already had X.com. So that says to me, he probably just said, I want to do it because I want to do it. And maybe it'll flop, maybe it won't go over. And Twitter had, like it or hate it, Twitter had brand recognition, it did have a name and people understood what it was about. So I don't know. Yeah, probably I would, if I had to gamble on this, I'm not much of a gambler, but I would bet that he didn't ask anybody what they thought. But at the same time, it's hard. We got to be careful comparing ourselves to, the first or second richest person in the world. He has, I guess you could say, he has the kind of money where he doesn't have to ask anybody, because he says, who cares? Who cares what you think? This is my company. And if I want to lose $10 billion doing this, I'll lose $10 billion doing this. It's not a publicly traded company anymore. Right. He just owns it. So he doesn't really answer to anybody. It's hard. But isn't it hard, Ben, to enter the world of someone who has, whatever it is, $100 billion, $200 billion? It's hard to know what's going on in their brain compared to the average person. But it's an interesting case study, and I guess time we'll find out eventually whether or not this is a good move.
Well, and you made a good point that he might not really care that much if
maybe he doesn't.
But I mean, let me ask you this: just because you have FU money doesn't mean you should be taking actions that say FU to the people surrounding you. Isn't this like a example of not being a positive communicator, to take decisions into your own hands rather than bringing the team on board? Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not the kind of approach that most people from the outside would recommend to Elon Musk, right? So, but then again, what are you going to do? what can you say to him? He's his own guy, like you said. He's got the kind of money where he doesn't have to. He probably doesn't care about their opinions. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. This is a weird situation. I think people are going to look back on the way he took it over, and they'll be studying it. I think they'll be studying it. I don't think there are any easy answers in terms of what it means right now. It's like the kind of thing you got to look back on a few years from now to figure out, like, if it was a great move or if it was the worst decision ever. So far, it doesn't seem like a great business decision, right? No. He's sort of alienating people, and some people are happy, but a lot of people aren't. But where is it heading? I don't know. Let's say 2-3 years from now, if Twitter's making boatloads of cash, then I guess we'll know that he was right. And if it's gone under, then I guess we'll know he was wrong.
Let's see what happens. You haven't done any reactions to Elon, have you?
I had one planned. I had some notes, and I still may do that. One of the problems, so the things, I do reaction videos, And I do reaction videos to sometimes interesting, controversial situations and people and figures and interviews. Those tend to do really well, but I get a lot of hate comments for those as well because they're polarizing. And then I do reaction videos to ordinary situations, ordinary speeches, there's nothing controversial about them. Those don't do as well on the channel. So I feel as if I don't want to chase controversy. If I see an interesting moment that I care about and I think there's educational value, I'll do it. And I have seen some very interesting clips from Elon. So I may do one yet, but I don't want to do it just because it was, controversial. I want to do it because there's some benefit that I can draw out of that can teach us something about communication. But he is at the top of my list the next time I do a reaction video. I don't do that many, out of 350 videos, I think I have 20 reaction videos. But they, people like them. They bring people to the channel. So I'll probably do some more.
Well, you've done Dolly Parton, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan. Any others that stand out?
Yeah, a big popular one for the channel was a Bill Gates interview where he was asked about Jeffrey Epstein. And to me, I don't have any proof. I'm just a guy. I'm not just, I don't know him. I wasn't there. But to me, his answers seemed a little strange. The way he reacted seemed a little strange. And so I thought, whoa, what's going on there? So I did a breakdown, and, half the people thought it was helpful. Half the people thought I had an axe to grind, but it has almost 5 million views. So, it got people talking.
I was going to say half the people thought it was helpful before they even watched it. And the other half thought you had an axe to grind before they even watched it.
You know something, Ben? You are probably right. You're probably right. Many people probably had their minds made up before they even watched anything about it, because I think that's how we are when we're consuming media, right? We go in with a chip on our shoulder sometimes, or we go in thinking, oh, great, I love this. Let's watch more. I think you're right about that.
We'll see. It's I don't know the numbers, but it seems like there's 5 to 10% on either side that are always going to polarize. But most people are like you and I think, want to look at the data, look at the facts, and make the best inquiry based on that. So I think it's an over-exaggeration to say half already were predetermined on each side, but maybe they might be some of the loudest commenters on YouTube.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So possibly a bad suggestion, but it's coming to mind. You could do a reaction video on this video.
That might be a bad suggestion, Ben.
All right, we'll move on to the rapid fire round. These are where I just kind of ask random, you can take your time with it, but more rapid fire questions with all the stuff that we maybe couldn't squeeze in, but I'm still curious about.
Let's do it.
Sounds good?
Yep.
I always have a list. Let's cherry pick some of the better ones. What's something important that most people don't know about you?
Well, people know a lot about me. I would say I'm a family man. Most people, my family's never on camera, never on the microphone, but I've been married for 21 years, happily married, and we have a teenage son. And that's, if I'm not like on camera, we're out doing something together. So I'm a family man. That's something I would love people to know about me.
Love this. So the classic dinner party question. So you're hosting a dinner party, everything's catered, good to go. You're just going to sit down and be present with any 2, 3, 5 people, live or dead. And let's narrow it down. They're exceptional communicators. So if you could sit down with just a handful of exceptional communicators, who would you get joy out of learning from?
Well, I have 3. Alive or dead, you said?
Alive or dead.
Okay, I have 3. First one would be my dad. He passed away. He was a great storyteller. He was a gripping person to be around. Second one would be Jesus, best storyteller of all time. And then third, I mentioned him earlier, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would love to have dinner with that guy. He's such a larger than life figure. He seemed like he would be a blast to hang out with over dinner. These are not the classic communicator people you might have expected, but those are the three that come to mind.
So you're sitting there with Arnold and Jesus, and your dad walks in the room 45 seconds late. What's he say? You sitting there with Arnold and Jesus.
Yeah.
What's coming out of his mouth?
He literally would probably say, "Whoa, this is a pretty good crowd." He would appreciate it. He would wonder what kind of pull I had to bring that group of people together.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Most important question: what are you working on right now, and how can me and the listener help you?
Well, the main thing we're working on is trying to get the word out about the book, which you're helping. Obviously, you mentioned it earlier. I really appreciate that.
I didn't bring this with me just to like put it in front of the camera. I actually have it with me because it was in my backpack and I'm reading it. So,
well, still, that's good marketing when you hold it up like that. I appreciate it, Ben. But I would say they can check that out. PositiveCommunicationForLeaders.com is the website for the book. And that's really what I'm spending my time doing, is trying to get the word out, let people know this is out, and get it into the hands of professionals and emerging leaders.
And if someone, for whatever reason, first off, I'll put the link in the show notes. If someone is hesitating and just wants to start a conversation, I'll buy the first 5 copies.
You're amazing.
I'm putting that out there. The first 5 copies are me, which is not hard to say because you sent me this one for free, so I at least owe at least one to an unsuspecting person. So reach out to me. And they can find you on YouTube as well, right?
On YouTube, yep. It's Alexander Lyon, or Communication Coach Alexander Lyon. And I am really into LinkedIn lately. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Alex Lyon. I think there it's Alex Lyon, not Alexander. But I'm the YouTube guy, so you'll be able to tell if you've got the right Alex Lyon on LinkedIn. And you can follow or connect, and I love it. I see LinkedIn as an amazing platform for content creators.
Yeah, click the follow, click the connect. If you want bonus points, write down a takeaway from this conversation in that connection request. You'll really get Alex's attention if you do that. You're a professor, so you're allowed to give homework. So give me and the person at home some homework. And I like to call them integration assignments because we talked about a lot of stuff today. But I don't really want to just be infotainment. I don't even know if this is entertaining. I hope it's valuable, but I don't want to be infotainment. I want someone to take a nugget or 2 or 3 and integrate it into their lives and their careers. So based on the conversation we had today, what assignment would you give us?
I'm going to go back to what we were getting into earlier. Then tomorrow or whenever you're at work next, work on greeting people. Focus on greeting 3 people really well. Give them your best. See what happens. And then, at least in a couple of those conversations, ask them a good open-ended question about how they're doing, what they've been up to, what they did over the weekend, to break the ice and open that connection for the day with that other professional. So that's the homework.
Love it. Dude, we didn't even talk about your courseware and your workshops. I do encourage people to go look this gentleman up because we only scratched the surface today, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. You've got a great podcast, and I so appreciate reconnecting with you like this.
We'll do it again soon.
Sounds great.